Are you getting a tariff dividend check?
We have a lot of things we can do. You know, one of the questions asked of me this morning is, are you going to make a dividend to the people? And the purpose of what I'm doing is primarily to pay down debt, which will happen in very large quantity. But I think there's also a possibility that we're taking in so much money that we may very well make a dividend to the people of America.
That was President Trump today, again, talking about this idea of a tariff dividend check. Now, before I talk about whether it can be a reality or not, we first need to start with why the president is even talking about this in the first place. And the answer is, as he said, because the United States is absolutely bringing in tons of money from these tariffs. As of the end of July, the tariffs have generated about $150 billion in revenue. That includes customs duties along with some excise taxes, but mostly it's the tariffs. And it does not include the new reciprocal tariffs that are set to take effect this Thursday. So we can absolutely expect that tariff revenue is going to go up in the coming months. And for context, when you compare the first 6 months of this year to the first 6 months of last year, tariff revenue since Trump took office has doubled. Economists predict over the next 10 years, if these tariffs hold, they could generate about $2.7 trillion in revenue for the United States. Sounds awesome, right? Well, the other fact you have to understand about tariffs is most of that $150 billion is being collected not from the foreign countries sending their imports to the United States. Those tariffs are actually being collected from the American companies that are bringing those imports into this country. And we're already starting to see those American companies passing a small portion of those tariff costs onto you, the American consumer. Just last week, the Federal Reserve said those American companies have already said that they have every intention of passing even more of the cost of Trump's tariffs onto you in the near future. In fact, the Yale Budget Lab's latest estimate found with Trump's new reciprocal tariffs taking effect this Thursday, American consumers will be facing an overall effective tariff rate of more than 18%. That is the highest tariff rate we have seen in this country since 1934. And that tariff rate, according to their analysis, will cost you an average of $2,400 more this year alone. Those costs, according to the Yale Budget Lab, in the short term will come from 40% higher costs for shoes, 38% higher costs for apparel, more than 3% overall higher costs for food. Fresh produce is expected to initially increase by 7%, and they are also expecting a 12% increase on new cars and trucks. Specifically, in the short run, they estimate with all these tariffs, new autos will cost you about $5,800 more. So yes, while it's true the U.S. already brought in $150 billion in tariff revenue, it's also true that generally you and American companies are the ones footing that bill. These tariffs are like another tax on you and American companies. So now that you know the facts, let's get back to this dividend check. When President Trump talks about his tariffs, he has never outright said that you or American companies pay for the tariffs. But he has said it sort of in roundabout ways. So when you think about this idea that Trump is floating about sending you a dividend check because of all this tariff revenue coming in, you can look at it two different ways. Either one, the president sees all this money being brought into the U.S. and out of the kindness of his heart, he thinks you should get a small portion of it. Or two, he actually knows these tariffs are going to cost you and American households about $2,400 more this year, so he wants to try and lessen that blow by sending you a check. You can decide for yourself what you think his motivation is here. But regardless of why he's doing it, the fact is sending a check is not his decision. That decision must be made by Congress. The House and the Senate would need to pass a new bill that would approve any new supposed tariff dividend check. And right now there is very little appetite from most Republicans in the Republican-controlled House and Senate to do any such thing. They are more interested in using all of this tariff revenue to pay down the $36 trillion in debt we're sitting on. You even heard the president say in that soundbite that was his main motivation for all these tariffs. But at the same time, there is actually a bill that's already been introduced by Senator Josh Hawley to provide a tariff dividend check to a certain group of Americans. At least right now, there is not a lot of support for that bill. But once all these tariff costs start to get passed down in bigger ways to consumers and lawmakers start to take angry calls from their constituents about the higher prices, they may be more willing to change their mind and support this tariff dividend check, or maybe even try to convince the president to back off his tariff policy.